Okay, Sean, I'll turn the time over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Just quick thumbs up. You can hear me okay? Everything sounds good? All
Mhm.
right. Well, thank you for having me. This is a great session. I've only been to, I think, two others prior to this. So I've already gotten a ton out and I'm now able to give a little bit back. So I'm happy to do that with you. I'm going to walk through you guys through some content that I've been developing over the last 15 years, and the last 5 of which at Schwab. Unfortunately, I'm kind of on transition away from Schwab at this point due to layoffs and things of that nature. But still want to share this with you because it's a passion of mine. I've been doing this for 20 years, and really want to focus on that. So the question being, how do we measure and what do we measure, especially in customer experience? Well, we know we're here to help the business measure loyalty. Almost always, if we're not measuring something at the business level, we might be struggling a little bit to understand and justify why we're doing it, because it's not just about measuring experience, but it's about being able to predict assets or revenue going up and churn of customers going down. That's really our opportunity. Now, many of you, like we do, you might have been using NPS for a while to measure loyalty of your customers or your clients, and I'm a longtime user of that at multiple different locations. But we also struggled a little bit. And about every 6 months, an article comes out about, oh, NPS is dead. And, the challenge with that is it's not really dead, because it's still, at least in my experience, a detractor is 4 times more likely to have negative assets or increased churn. And so it's not really dead. It's just sometimes the challenge is why. The ultimate question, and even Bain and Reicheld, they're kind of looking at other options. Well, in 2013, a new metric came out based on a book by Matt Dixon, Rick DeLisi, and team at CEB, Customer Effort Score. And the book itself was The Effortless Experience. If you haven't read it, highly recommend to read. In my experience in launching this survey, we're able to predict detractors and therefore be able to predict actual people who will be disloyal by asking them about effort. And we're going to talk a little more about that, but I've seen that growing actually over the last several years, 4 times, 5 times more likely. If I have high effort situations, I'm 5 times more likely to be a detractor and to actually have negative or disloyal behavior. Add to that then the opportunity to understand emotions. We actually see that as a multiplier. So for instance, high effort plus very negative emotion, instead of 5x is closer to 8x or 10x more likely to be a detractor and be disloyal. So we're starting to be able to see from these measures, the opportunity to understand and predict actual behavior that we're here to find for our businesses. So let's talk a little bit about customer effort score. So for those who don't know what it is a transaction survey. So net promoter score should be more of a relationship survey. I know some companies do ask it on a transaction basis, but customer effort is really about the transaction. So after an interaction, whether it's online, the website, the mobile app, the call center, the chat group, to what extent do you agree with the following statement? Company made it easy for me to handle my request or my issue. And you answer it on a 7-point scale from I strongly disagree, meaning it was hard, or I strongly agree. The way you calculate the metric is the percent of 5, 6, and 7, so above midpoint, as long as it's agree to strongly agree that yes, it was easy, those are successful customer effort scores. And the percentage would be a representative of easy out of all. So again, it's really great to look at and understand, and for, like I said, it's something we use to predict actual behavior, and we even use that to take outbound or proactive activities with a lot of our customers or clients. So continuing down that, and we're here to evaluate the customer journey. I mean, we in business, we think we're designing very straight and easy processes, right? But ultimately, our customers end up winding around. And the examples of that are, I try it online, I try it on the mobile app, I have to call, I get bounced from call center to call center group, I end up chatting, and maybe I'm doing all of that at the same time. And so there's that reality that, the more that our journeys are higher effort, are more challenging, obviously, the more we're starting to send people into disloyal behavior and maybe to our competitors. Because in my context, the way I like to talk about it is those rivers wind, and those journeys of the customers get rougher because of the rocks. What are the business rocks? What are the things? Is it broken processes, broken procedures, training that's poor, or systems that aren't designed? What are those rocks for us? So part of our exploration over the last bit of time has really been, how do we put this together? How do we better understand the overall opportunity? Now, for us, we did it in a 3-step process. We aligned on the journeys. Not all tasks are considered journeys. So you really have to think about what journeys are taking on, what activities are likely to end in a multiple contact, what metrics do you use to measure that experience, and then ultimately, how do we rank that? So I'm doing this really fast. I usually cover this in about 90 minutes. So I'm going really fast in this to get to kind of this next slide. But be careful what you wish for. As we look at the overall opportunity in what we're doing, we're trying to identify the rocks. Where are the client pain points? And so as we think about what do you use to measure the experience, to measure loyalty, et cetera, we have multiple things that we can look at. Now I'm going to look to the right a little bit. The customer effort score works on B2B, B2C. It is a little bit more B2C relevant. We've seen it have the same prediction within the B2B and even the B2B2B2C space, excuse me. But it is very much a very predictor in the retail side. So you have to be conscious of that kind of that B2B view. So as we look at this, effort is more predictive than satisfaction. I think I saw someone noted kind of about satisfaction. You can be satisfied, but if it's hard effort, there's a real difference, and it's much more predictive in that context than just being satisfied. And so we actually no longer use satisfaction metrics. We use the effort. So I'm going to hit this and kind of explain what you're looking at a little bit. This is what we call the rocks report. And we kind of coined this as resolution of customers' known struggles. So we're trying to find the rocks. We're trying to find those known struggles. And what we're looking at here is basically understanding the landscape of experience. So the first thing we look at are all the different journeys. So we highlight cross-channel journeys across the business. These are the primary things that the customers do with us. Then we look across the top at different metrics for different groups. The phone team, things like issue resolution, repeat contacts, transfers, escalations within the call center area. Digital, overall digital CES impact, containment, those attempting digital or website issues. And then even from a agent perspective, things like hold time, handle time, negative language or confusion. And then lastly, looking at sentiment, measures of emotion as we go through that. What we do then is we take each of the journeys and we measure them across these metrics, and then we create this kind of heat map, this opportunity to evaluate. I'll highlight a few quick things and then tell a story on it, and then we'll kind of open it up for questions. One thing that we look at right off top is the volume, and the bigger the number, the more negative. So in fact, client journey 16 from a volume standpoint is the top call driver. Customer effort score is the overall metric, customer effort score as used within what I described earlier. What's interesting to look at in a lot of cases is the highest effort situations are often some of the lowest volume. And who of us put a lot of focus on low volume activities to automate or drive things for improvement? Probably not as many of us, because they are lower volume. There's that bang for your buck approach. But ultimately, this is where we see this. And then looking across a journey, we can also see what's hot for that journey. Where is, in this case, journey 1, high effort, repeat contacts, heavy influence by digital, heavy influence by handle time and agent confusion, and definitely very negative sentiment. So we know that journey ticks the boxes across these areas, and that starts to point us where those rocks are, where those challenges are. But it's not just about a one-time view. I'll close on an example, and then we'll open it up to questions. But it's also about seeing how this changes over time. I'll use an example. We saw a specific journey that jumped from out of the top 10 to the top 5 in a matter of weeks. And it primarily jumped in 2 areas: lack of resolution or issue resolution, and attempting digital, which told us that people were trying something online and they were not getting their issue resolved at a higher scale. And those metrics themselves jumped across the board. We immediately looked at that journey and could clearly understand there's something going on the website. And what we found was the digital team had tried to make things better, and they had actually improved or sped up the launch of an email. But what they had done, unfortunately, is that when someone clicked on the link on the email, the process wasn't ready yet. They had moved it up too far. And so it was actually breaking the entire process. And therefore, we were seeing lack of resolution and multiple calls, all being driven by this challenge, this rock actually created by the web team when they were trying to make something easier. And so there's all sorts of examples that I can share on that, but it really helps lay this out in a way that our business has used this to identify what are the hot spots, where can we focus. So even if I just own one journey as a product owner, I can look across my journey and understand where is the influence of that. So I know that I heard there's going to be a lot of questions and probably a lot of discussion. So going over to I actually can open it up audio to questions, but I could also look at some of the slides over here.
Yeah. So folks, thank you so much, Sean. That was, my mind is spinning right now. I'm sure many of yours is as well. So we're going to do something called Big Fish, Little Bait. What this means, Sean is our big fish, and he can look over here in the chat. And I want you all to just put your questions in the chat. We may not be able to get to all of them. We've got about 9 minutes that we can do Q&A. And if we don't get to your question, we'll post those in the LinkedIn, and then Sean has agreed to go in and take a look at those or answer some of those. So with that, please post your questions in that chat, how this is utilized. When Sean showed us this, we said, wow, this matrix has a lot of value and there's so much here. So with that, Sean, I'll let you kind of jump in and maybe answer some of these questions or dive into some of these as you think about them.
Yep, absolutely. So I will jump in. There was one right before the end there is considering whether rocks are like a customer health score. Not necessarily. And I think that someone else even answered that. It really does measure the experience, and because of that, the effort. Now, there can be other attributes as part of the health score around the customer, et cetera. But in this case, you're really honing in on the transaction, both individual channel level and multi-channel level. And what we find, especially in the Effortless Experience book, is the more channels a client or a customer has to involve, the higher their effort. And it actually is proven in the data. We saw that if in general you call our call center, you have a CES of let's just say 80. If you do it online, it's 85. But if you were online and you called, it's actually closer to a 70. So that multi-channel impact is really heavy on predicting high effort. It is not going to CES equivalent to CSAT. It is not. It is very different. CSAT, you're saying how satisfied were you, let's say with an interaction, et cetera. What we're finding, and at least what I'm finding more and more, is CSAT, customer satisfaction or overall satisfaction, does not really measure anything in a predictive way. People can be satisfied, but not loyal. So what we're seeing is the prediction of customer effort absolutely predicts high effort, predicts disloyalty. So satisfaction may be something that is used to evaluate the experience at some level. It doesn't have the same prediction that customer effort does. We launched, there's a question here about launching surveys. So we run the customer effort score at the end of the interaction across the different channels. So we do it post-call, post-chat. We also do it within the website and the mobile app. We also do it via the chat bot. So any channel, any contact channel, we do the customer effort score with and measure it in that way. But we also ask questions where we say, hey, especially after the call, were you online before you called? What other channel did you use? It helps us understand the bigger journey, not just that task, not just that solo interaction. What we're also working on, and this is where AI and other methodologies can really help you, is to, if you have journey analytics, if you literally can track a client at the end of the journey, regardless of the channels they touched, you could ask them at the end of the journey. We do it kind of sometimes from a product and a product event standpoint to say, overall, tell me about the different experiences you had across the different channels. And that can be even more insightful as to the opportunity there to measure that effort. Looking at some questions here. We separate NPS from effort. NPS we do at a relationship level, and then the customer effort score we do at the transaction level. We don't ask OSAT within that. Our focus really is on the effort and the journey. I kind of answered a little bit about the journey, scrolling down a little bit. So the individual boxes that you're looking at, do they represent different surveys? Not necessarily. So for instance, within the phone, we do channel level surveys. We use text analytics to identify, the survey result, tie them to the call transcript, and then from the call transcript, tie them to the reason for the call. So it's a layered approach. There's a lot of complexity behind this, and happy to offline, have further conversations with any of you, kind of the ideas and the strategies and things here that we're looking at. But it's definitely, there's a ton behind the scenes, but it's also not something that can't be done. Usually with technology you already have, it's just using it in the right way. It looks like how do we establish CES? Well, the first is we launched it one channel at a time. So we started with post call, we then launched it within the website, and then we added it in chat, mobile app, et cetera. And so it's really just taking that opportunity to look at the interactions, post interactions, and ask that customer effort score, going back to kind of the slides there. And we'll make sure these slides get out to everyone as well. CES is pretty widely used. I mean, again, it came out in 2013. Not everybody has really, embraced it yet. It doesn't have that kind of net promoter score following yet, but it's becoming very, very common. And conferences that I speak at, more and more, usually about half the room either uses or it is using or trying to use the customer effort score. So it's becoming a bigger part. It is very much tried and true. Gartner actually now owns the customer effort score context, and they can coach and work with you to kind of talk through your implementation of CES, et cetera. Benchmarking at a general level is available. It's not as readily available, like I said, with NPS as far as by industry or different companies within that, but you can look at best in class is usually 85 to 90 plus in CES is best in class. And then down from there, in layers as we look at that as well.
Sean, if I could jump in, I thought there was an interesting question here from Ben. As we look at the matrix in front of us, he's asking how many, you're measuring a lot of factors and many of them are shades of red. How do you prioritize which red to work on first?
Well, and that's the beauty of this. The red points us in a direction. I translate that to, we know the journey, we know the river. It tells us where the rapids are. So for instance, something as high as lack of digital containment, or, they attempted digital at a very high rate. We look at those. That's not where the rock, that's not the rock. And so there is still that added layer combination of using AI and machine learning to figure out the layers behind that. But this is also where we operationalize this kind of report, because we give it, for instance, to our digital teams or our web teams or our call center teams to say, hey, look at these journeys. We now know, because we've assigned these, we know which journeys are going on. We know which ones to look at. We know which metrics. And so we actually partner, for instance, with our QA team and with others to say, all right, tell me a little more about this. So even if you're not already embracing AI and the ability to do that kind of analysis at scale, it becomes an operational opportunity to say, hey, let's work together. Here's where we're looking. I can't tell you how many times we would come up with a report, or we would run the report, and then we would meet with the quality team and they would immediately say, oh yeah, and listening to calls, I can tell you exactly what that is. The challenge with most companies is it's not that we don't know where the issue is or that there's an issue in a certain place. It is hard to figure out how to prioritize. So that's where, when we look at the journeys and we look at the impacts, we then meet with the leadership team to say, hey, your top efforts are these very low journeys. Do you have product teams that we can work with on that? Or do you want to prioritize this overall? The other opportunity we look at are things like this, where client journey 4 has both high effort and high volume, and skipping down even further to 8 or 9. So most of the time when the leadership teams are weighing in, they're looking at that volume to CES comparison, because they still kind of think, biggest bang for buck on self-service or improvements. But then again, we can work with specific product teams and say, hey, this is where you need to focus. So we can hit both the macro and the micro opportunities within this evaluation as well.
Fantastic. And then Sean, a lot of people are jumping in, and everybody, thank you for crowdsourcing ideas in here. The chat is amazing. kind of wrapping us up, this leads perfectly into one of the other questions, which was, can you give us a little bit of an idea of how you went about identifying your journeys in the first place? Maybe give us some tips on how you did that and how you would go about that.
Absolutely. And if you haven't already kind of done that, it is step number one for a reason. So in that context, we brought in our different channel leads, and we focused on, first on asking them, what do you feel are the most important activities or opportunities? We obviously looked at things like Salesforce, what kind of dispositions were out there already. A lot of this work is probably already done. What's unique about it, though, is you've got to get aligned across the channels. And so taking that and then going to the web team and saying, all right, let's look at navigation, for instance. Navigation usually represents primary activities that the client does on the website or the mobile app. Then we look at the call center and we look at text analytics and call drivers and how they translate that. And then we bring those groups together. So it does become an opportunity to share and create, in essence, a rocks team, if you will, or partners within the business to evaluate those journeys and understand them. Again, the key is focusing on journeys, not tasks. What we look for when we identify the journeys is the likelihood of multi-channel over time. Password reset. Yes, I'm online and I might have to call if I have to do a password reset. So that would be a journey, but you also might consider that, is that a task? And so that's a little different per company. This is why it's real important for you to kind of think about that together, because ultimately what you're looking at is those activities, those journeys, those things that take multiple contacts or over time, and you're usually considering those as your primary journeys. And there's a lot of opportunity then in sharing that together is, one, making sure you're using the same language. The last thing we do, and technically not last thing, but what we also did was we actually surveyed our clients. We asked them, what are the most important things you do with our organization? And if you've never asked your clients about that, or your customers about what's most important to them, what activities are most important to them, this is a great opportunity to do it, because when you bring the customer voice in with your internal voice, one, it helps you avoid jargon and a lot of other problems there, but it lets you really bring that together holistically. Now you know that you're focusing on, the right journeys and activities to measure going forward as well.
Wow. Sean, this has been absolutely incredible. Everybody out there, let's give Sean a big brain trust thanks with some hands, some energy hands. I think we could probably look at that matrix for a while. There are a ton of questions in here related to that. So folks, if we didn't get to your question, stick around. We're going to do a panel discussion after this, and we're going to break down more and dive deeper into the metrics that you use to drive business outcomes. As you can see, Sean has spent a lot of time thinking about this and putting it into a framework that really enables you. I mean, I come from client success. This was 7 years ago. And that book that you had mentioned, Sean, had just come out a few years later. And it's incredible to see the paradigm shift. I was getting calls from people saying, hey, if I talk to another nice person that doesn't know anything about the product, I'm going to kill you. And back in the day, we thought, oh, we just have to, hire nice people, but we're getting so much better and so more scientific about this. And this is where it should be going. So,
yeah, people care about the journeys. They care about the overall river, not one interaction, mainly because that's where the frustration lies. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Sean. Appreciate your effort into this. And folks, if people want to get in touch with you, can you add your contact information, LinkedIn or whatever it might be, in the comments, please?
Will do.
That would be fantastic. Again, thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right, folks. Well, this is where things start to get really fun. A lot of engagement happening in the chat. A lot of you have thoughts, ideas. You have implemented CES. Some of you are just starting in it. So there's going to be an amazing brain trust session here in just a moment. So let me frame that up for y'all. What we're going to do is go into the collaborative portion of today. So right now, your cup in terms of inspiration should be filled. And now you get to get down into the nitty gritty. We call this the community of practice. Okay. Let me stop the recording.